are also like different community level initiatives. There's one in Goshen. Anybody knows where the Emerson Goshen area is? It's very strong and healthy, still going. There used to be a transition Ferndale. So, it could be like all these kind of micro scales from top to bottom, from small to large. Transition Whatcom is also part of a regional hub. We have a meeting online once a month, and there's about 6 regional groups in the area. Lopez Island, San Juan Island, Port Townsend, Anacortes, and I think Port Angeles, and perhaps a couple more.
And all the scallops groups in Seattle.
And scallops in Seattle.
Sustainable Northeast Seattle, Sustainable Ballot, Sustainable.
Yeah, I'm not sure how many of those groups are still active, but yeah, we used to be part of the scallops kind of community throughout the Seattle to Vancouver, BC kind of network. There's also a Transition US on the national level, so we're associated with that. And then on the global level, it was all started by the Transition Network. There's this broad scope that includes the head, the heart, and the hand. And I thought, well, that's brilliant, because we need all of those. We need to be educated, we need to learn, we need to have hands-on things that people can actually do on a practical level and get things done. We also really need to engage our hearts and connect with each other and reimagine what community really is, and to make relationships real again. And so I thought that was brilliant, to connect all those things. But then to realize that there's enough structure to give you some really practical things to apply, and yet there's no official ties to any other organization that require you to do certain things or to manifest in a certain way or to answer to all those kinds of things. So there's just a lot of freedom to really make it real for where you are and what you want to do, and the people that you have and what they want to do. So there's really a lot of encouragement to make your plans based on the people that show up, what they have the skills for and aliveness for it. So Transition Goshen out in the county looks very different than Transition Whatcom. It's more oriented around the city community. Transition Chuckanut, or they call themselves Chuckanut Transition, looks very different from Transition Goshen. So they all have their own unique expression. Transition Goshen is being a rural community. They really focus on kind of like here, they have a lot of potlucks. And people come together and they share. There's a lot of people, that have gardens, and so they share what they're growing. They share seeds. They need some help to do something, and so people will show up and help them do. And that's really like most of what they do. Chuckanut Transition, they organize like farm stands and sharings like that. So again, it's really dependent on what the group wants to do. Like I said, it was founded in 2006 by Rob Hopkins, who was a permaculture teacher, and he was really looking at, there's all these practical permaculture things you can do that are hands-on, but they seem to be manifesting really in isolated ways. And he was thinking, how can I apply these principles on a social level, in communities, and make this real on a community level? So I really like how he took permaculture principles and started working them out in this way. And they really focus on 3 things: climate emergency, the energy and fossil fuels availability and impacts, and number 3, economic precariousness. The precarious nature of our economic situation. And so with those kind of 3 big targets, and a focus on community level and engaging people And they called it, they encouraged us to try to make what you're doing to be more like a party and less like a protest march. Because so much of environmental activism up until that time was about, what do we not want? What are we against? We stand up and we put our signs up and we march about what we're against. But what if we actually organized to try to manifest what we want? And so that was a big emphasis of the transition network. So it inspired some of us in Bellingham. We're already involved in other groups, but thought this would help us to take it to the next level. It gave us more concrete ideas rather than kind of hit or miss things. So it gave us some ideas for taking plans of action and accomplishing things. And so we came together, we formed a transition initiative called Transition Whatcom. We held a number of monthly meetings. We called it Party Up for Power Down. We started getting people's interest, and then we planned and organized this big event in Bellingham called the Great Unleashing, which happened, I think, in April 2010. We brought 3 different keynote speakers, and we had all sorts of local people giving presentations on different topics, and gathered everybody at Bellingham High School, and then met afterwards again to start thinking about planning, organizing interest groups, kind of like how you guys have been doing with the different groups that people could get plugged into on specific topics. And then we went from there. And since 2009, I have from 2009 to 2011, I was kind of tracking every event or every thing that we organized, pages and pages and pages. But it was probably around 2012, things kind of started slowing down, and we started, because we're totally volunteer, there's no paid staff at all. It's totally dependent on who shows up and who wants to take action. But we kind of slowly started running out of steam, and some people got burned out. And I felt we got kind of maybe too diverse in all the interest groups and all the things we were trying to do. Maybe we were trying to do too much, but that's kind of how it's been. And since then, we've been keeping the lights on and holding activity once a year or so, whether that's sponsoring a speaker or 2 coming to town, sponsoring a movie. We've done a lot of partnering, with Village Books, authors that are writing books that are relevant and co-sponsor and help promote that. Films at the Pickford, documentaries that are important. We co-sponsored those and helped make those happen. Just working with a lot of different organizations through town. But like I say, since 2012 or 2013, it's been on a much lower key, but still active. And we've got a website. It's on the platform called Ning, which is basically enables us to do community networking, and you sign up for it, and you kind of get your own little page where you can say something about yourself. You can actually email other people in the group without actually sharing your personal email, so you can send messages back and forth without sharing your personal information, so people can connect that way. You can set up interest groups, and you can do that. One of the things, a lot of it's really outdated right now, so it's in need of an upgrade. One of the things, though, is that I do this thing called community events, Transition Walking News and Events, which is a newsletter I try to send out about once a week. And people can enter events. They don't have to be sponsored by Transition, but if they're related to the issues we're concerned about, like forward meetings, put those on our events page, and then send a newsletter out to people, letting people know about what's going on in the community for that. Okay, so one thing I wanted to share was that transition movement can be seen as like a guide that where we're all up on this mountaintop on a mountain of plastic and fossil fuels and choking on the fumes, and realizing that times are getting bad and we need to make some changes, but we're not sure exactly how to get back down to the warm valley below. And Transition movement is like that guy that says, come on, I'll show you the way down. It's really not that hard. We can do it. And once we get down there, there's going to be a warm fireside and dry socks. And we can tell stories about our adventures and reconnect with each other. So it's what we want to do is rebuild our creative imagination as a community, come together. There's a lot of difficult situation in the world now. It's not going to be easy, likely, in our transitioning. But when we come together, it doesn't mean we can't have fun. We can't connect and grow and learn together and make something really meaningful in our lives. Right now, Transition US is undergoing its own kind of reevaluation and reemergence and rethinking itself. And they're now doing a program called Regeneration Nation. And they're really reaching out to indigenous communities and BIPOC community and trying to engage more diversity and inclusion. And the tagline that they're using for this Regeneration Nation project is resist, repair, reimagine, and regenerate. I'm calling R4 for those 4 R's. So just a few bullet points about what could transition outcome mean for forward. Could provide a framework that is detailed enough to be really useful, but open enough for allowing the group to decide what it wants to do and have full control over how it manifests. Transition outcome can offer a lot of tools for effective social organization and engagement. There's lots of experience and wisdom to be passed on about what we did that we thought was right, what we did that might be done better in the future, things we learned along the way. And there's lots of freedom to let it go where it wants to go. One of the principles in the transition framework that we originally learned was for the people that formed the initiating group were advised, after you have this great unleashing and you get the whole community involved, to kind of let it go. So we were advised to kind of resign from our position of leadership and then invite a new leadership group to come on board. And that was to encourage the idea of let it go where it wants to go. Try to avoid founder syndrome. So I think there's a lot to be said for history, things learned, structures and frameworks that can help give you enough that you can carry it forward, but open enough so that you can continue to be creative and continue to reimagine what wants to emerge now. And leadership structure, what we've used is a framework called ACORN, which is taught by Alan Seid, who's not here today, but he's a really good source for the community in terms of teaching how some of the social organization aspects can be brought forward. And so I won't go into the detail about that, but there's a lot of horizontal leadership rather than this vertical top-down. But there is circles and areas of responsibility in how that would manifest. Like the people that show up and are most engaged, and you don't get taken off course by like a newcomer coming in that doesn't really understand what you're trying to do. So there's some protections built in. But again, like how we organize and the structure of like the relationship between forward and transition outcomes. If you want to do that, that can be talked about how that's done, whether to maintain complete sovereignty and still be connected.